Hey everybody, welcome to Tuesday. This is probably going to be a quicker video because it's super late right now. I bit off way more than I could chew today. I had to go to the doctor and then come back and shoot the boss fight end credits music video thing. And then at around, yes, guys, I know you're mad at me. Long past when the kiddies are like, come make dinner now. I'm like, oh crap, I have to do this video. So I apologize if this seems rushed. I did go through your comments, though most of the comments of this one were people like being triggered by The Witcher 3 instead of saying, you know, what triggers you enough to act on it. But I have had comments that people have read. Some people thanked me for reading their comments yesterday, so that was pretty cool. So let's do a little bit more of that today, and then I will go make Angry Kitties dinner. The cats like it when I make dinner because then they get lap time, and so they're kind of mad that it's late on lap time. Again, boss fight episode 3 tomorrow, barring disaster. I've just gotta fix up the credits, output. Fingers crossed, guys. Oh, this month. Okay, if you like this sort of thing, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. I went to the doctor today to get to the bottom of this cough stuff that's going on. So, more on that another time. Okay, your comments. Nothing makes me angry enough to participate in the culture war. I thought I'd start here. Somebody going, nope, nothing. However, it continues. It's difficult for me to see that dystopian nightmare as anything other than a series of marketing campaigns for the edgelords who profit from it. It's infuriating that it's nigh impossible for the rest of us to have a conversation about the things we love without an intrusion from someone who wants to tear us down for profit. In an attention economy, I see angry typing as a win for them and a huge loss for me. So this is somebody who isn't angry enough to participate, but is pretty pissed off. So I included that comment. I would say that there's so much idiocy surrounding the culture war that I'm having trouble picking just one. I think in general, I hate the idea in some people's minds that only right-wing conservatives are capable of pushing moral panics. Because last time I checked, Anita Sarkeesian was not a registered Republican, and she did not push her Kickstarter and YouTube series through Fox News, and yet she single-handedly accomplished what Jack Thompson and dozens of evangelical megachurches could not. I will confirm that moral panics do not just come from the right. In the 80s and 90s, that was predominantly where they came from, but in the, was it the 70s or was Dworkin in the 80s? Anyway, the Dwork side that I refer to, that came from radical feminism. That was not right-wing anybody. What makes me upset is when new unfaithful adaptations are made from the source material that changes and ruins the characters or franchise just to virtue signal, pander, tokenization for people that weren't going to buy their product anyway. This is something that comes up a lot, and this idea that why are you making stuff for people that are never going to buy it? And I've yet to get to the bottom of whether or not they do see an uptick in sales from a change, or whether, you know, it was sort of a lost cause. So I can't confirm that with evidence. I will say that it doesn't seem like most reboots nowadays are setting the world on fire. It seems that the things that pay more homage, pay more deference to the source material tend to do well. So there's reason to say this is right. I just, full disclosure, cannot prove this, but thank you for your comment. Some minor ones that are aggravating but not worth fighting over. Changing the sexuality of a character. Changing a character out at all to replace with something more, I guess, taking away a character to replace with something more inclusive. Anti-old fans' attitudes and mockery, if not insults and dismissal. The love it or you're an istaphobe, I don't know what istaphobe is, culture I've long equated with abuse. The people that make excuses for the last one, while knowing better, as I said, I don't blame the spoiled child as much as a parent that enabled them. So you see, I put those two together so that I can't prove what the first commenter said, but the fact that there's more than one commenter saying very similar things indicates it's worth reading. Now we're getting into some longer ones, so bear with me. I may butcher the read here, okay? The only thing that gets me mad is the banner waving. Banner waving is something that people do out of arrogance and a desire to oppress other people. People deify an argument, a perspective, a statement, or just about anything they can to treat it as this immaculate cudgel which they can find an excuse just to inflict pain on people, and anything that goes against the thing they have printed on their banner of choice because this becomes this essence of evil. The whole problem with banner waving ultimately boils down to one idea: obey or be eliminated. I know it's just something we have to deal with as part of human nature, but that doesn't mean I can't find it upsetting. The banner waving, the echo chambers, the sycophantic behavior to the one truth has always been destructive, and any person who practices such ultimately dehumanizes themselves more than anyone else. The laughable part is that people think that they're practicing critical thinking. There's always this misconception that being able to effectively counter someone else's argument. It's not a mark of critical thinking. It's not. A mark of critical thinking is the ability to constantly go against your own arguments and perspectives. And there are always many who use critical thinking or lack thereof to dismiss other people while not really thinking critically themselves. Like I said, I was going to butcher the read, but, I come across this on the internet all the time. People who make these statements thinking, oh, they laid some sort of smackdown, some truth bomb, right? And really, I'm sitting here going, that only tangentially connects to what I just said. But that's somebody who's looking for some sort of in to say the thing they wanted to say, not somebody who's actually having a conversation. They're not present in the conversation. And I admit that's really frustrating. While I agree that banner waving, as they put it, is a part of human nature, I think the extreme to which it's gone and the amount that we see in post-secondary institutions, aka colleges and universities, I don't think that's something we should just be putting up with. I mean, by the time somebody gets to college, they are ostensibly an adult, and there's gotta be something these schools can do to let people, work the crazy pants out of their system, but still teach them how to argue effectively, teach them how to say something cogently instead of just loudly. So I agree that's frustrating and it's irritating. I don't think anybody should be stuck just putting up with something like that. People have to have the right to be able to say, I don't like this. And I think the reason it's so irritating is right now a lot of people feel like they can't see yesterday's comments, right? See, I'm tying it all together. Okay. So again, some of these, the next three are long, and I will butcher this read. Okay. To answer the feedback question, what do you want people to know? What gets you angry enough to get involved? The seeming erasure of characters and the past by one side to claim something like, finally, an insert group deemed a minority, even if women make up 51% of the human race, they still count, has a prominent role in this genre, as though suddenly it was a sausage fest before. It's not progress, especially when the new characters are worse than the old ones were. Most of the time, and criticism of the writing is dismissed as just toxic sexist man babies upset, go cry somewhere else, chud. It's ours now. Points for the word chud. Recent example, Doctor Who, with the whole, finally a female doctor so little girls can have a role model in the show, when the show had, and there's a lengthy paragraph of all the female characters that Doctor Who has had over the years that are, interesting and strong and complex. And I will give you that point. So I'm not going to read all of them because yes, there's been a lot of very interesting companions over the years in Doctor Who. They continue. Even if you want to rule out some of the women in New Who as not strong enough or them being love interest, Still, Doctor Who has strong female characters, and making the Doctor female, in this person's opinion, didn't work for the show. If anything, having the Doctor being a woman has made it so it's near impossible to call the show out as bad now, including bad because they're wasting the character of Yaz and have done so for 2 seasons now because they don't seem to feel the need to try anymore. I included that lengthy Doctor Who stuff because I know that the 13th Doctor content, 13th Doctor, I've lost track, is controversial among Whovians because they didn't just change who played the Doctor. That's happened before. They changed a lot of the format of the show in that it's less, I'm behind, but the first season I saw, it was less about ongoing lore than previous seasons had been, and much more about sort of, isolated episode of the week. My understanding is that that's because they hoped new viewers would hop on with the new Doctor, and so they didn't want them to have to know a whole bunch of continuity that, new viewers didn't know. And I know a lot of people didn't like that change. So, that's something that, and this is the whole problem with the 13th Doctor. Again, I forget. But because they changed so much at once, you can't really say you just don't like the show because she's a woman. I understand some people, same way Star Trek does, you change anything, people get really upset. Now, I don't have a problem with the female Doctor Who. I do agree that there's been a lot of interesting female characters in Doctor Who over the years. I agree that New Who, I like that, hasn't done as well in that regard. Not because of the characters themselves, but how they all have to be tied to some dude somewhere. But just as an example of I felt that with Star Wars, of all things. Like, oh, now we have Rey. Now girls have something to play with. Princess Leia? Like, what? What are you talking about? There hasn't been enough of a female presence in Star Wars up until this point. Never mind the, the Clone Wars cartoons with, like, Ahsoka Tano, like, front and center right there. And there were a lot of other really cool, like, Jedis and stuff like that they put in. I did not know until recently that Jennifer Hale did a voice of one of those. Forgetting her name, Sakura or something like that. I'm terrible with the names of that stuff, but there you go. Okay, another lengthy comment, but I have edited this one a bit for space, so I could for time, so I could fit it in here. As for what triggers me, if you will, it's spite. I love when people cut to the chase. It's when the people making my media or whatever else seem to hate me, not individually, they don't know me individually, but demographically, or have contempt for me on the basis of identity in their perceptions of my politics. I put this in because I thought it's sort of saying similar to the last comment in a different way. That can come in the form of overt fuck white men type behavior from devs on social media. It can be double standards where they give some people the benefit of the doubt, but not people like me. It can be censoring content that caters to me or changing the identities of characters in ways that suggest I'm being pushed out the door to make room for a better, trendier audience. See the commonality? It can be a lot of the things. In the case of The Last of Us 2 and Neil Druckmann was when he bragged about firing a sexist focus tester. I only found out about this recently, by the way, so bear with me. I don't know if this even happened or if he's retelling the story fairly, but it sounds a bit like, and then everyone clapped. Basically, he fired somebody for not liking elements of the game, if people are wondering. But either way, it just struck me as an effort to virtue signal at the expense of people like me. Whether the person being used to paint people like me in a bad light is a straw man or merely a weak man, it seems like how he views everyone in the a vague neighborhood of my politics, and he's saying in no uncertain terms that we're not welcome, while aggrandizing himself and publicly humiliating some poor bastard, if said poor bastard exists, who he hired to give feedback, whose feedback he then didn't like. It's him celebrating a breach of trust, and it's a message of enormous spite. That was my reaction to him telling that story as well. As somebody who's done focus testing, as somebody who gets feedback from my stuff, just because you disagree with what a focus tester tells you doesn't mean you shouldn't at least consider it and figure out if there's a way to mitigate that reaction. That's the whole point, right? If you're making something just for people like you don't need focus testers, right? The whole point of focus testers is to give you a different perspective. And I do think that if somebody's hired to come in and play the game, you shouldn't fire them for giving you feedback you find, I don't know, offensive. I don't know why the creative director of a video game would be running the focus testing element. Anyway, I've never seen that whenever I've, been in for even as media, like even for a media focus test, when we went in and like played the game before it was released and they say, well, what do you think? It was never like the top tier guy. The idea that the, creative director of a studio is there with focus testers, that strikes me as a bit suspicious. I am inclined to agree with this commenter that it's very possible that this story just did not happen, or it did not happen the way he's claiming. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the whole thing seems like a big, yeah, you're standing up for rights, The reality is it is a breach of confidence and it's poor behavior. And this is one of the difficult things about being the boss of something. You're not allowed to just voice every reaction you have. Sometimes you gotta keep it, close to the vest. And one of the things that makes me angry is when I see people breaching confidences and breaching trust to try to score points. That was the one thing I admit I really saw red on that Animal Crossing Space Buns thing, when people started publishing private DM chats to somehow make their point or whatever, something, over the line, over a friggin' video game. The minute you do that without a person's permission, the person can't trust you anymore. And okay, the person couldn't trust you to begin with based on some of the stuff that's going on there, but there are bigger things at play. If a person lies and I have proof of a lie, well, that's one thing. You present it as evidence because person's lying, right? But if you're just sharing a DM, it's different than sharing a tweet. You'll notice I like scratch out names and everything like that, even when I share tweets, just to prove something happened, right? But a DM? No. Those are private. Those should stay private. Private things need to be private because people need, in certain circumstances, it's very, very important that people feel like they can speak freely, even if what they say is offensive. There is a time and a place for that. Okay, final comment here. Sorry, this is the second part of this comment. Wow, I missed a lot. So, okay, Last of Us 2. Moving on to the Witcher Netflix series here. Commenter, I'm even angrier at Lauren Hisrick for saying she wasn't going to race bend in the Witcher Netflix series and then doing it anyway. She promised, and I took her at her word. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I defended her. It's hard not to imagine that as that happened, again, not me personally, people like me, she was sitting there knowing she was going to be treacherous and throw me under the bus with a smug grin, thinking to herself, I got these stupid nerds to actively cover for me while I take the things they love away from them. What a bunch of rubes. All dishonesty is infuriating, but dishonesty out of spite or hate or contempt, far more so than dishonesty simply motivated by wanting my money. And maybe that sounds paranoid, but it's a worldview I formed from years of watching people like this who seem to almost fetishize the desecration of any culture their outgroups finds comfort or refuge in, go mask off and admit to attitudes like that. It's come to the point where if I see telltale signs of that attitude, that person is my enemy and I will start angry typing. I'm so happy people use angry typing. That's awesome. Okay. I am going to offer a bit of information, not to defend Lauren Hissrich, just a little bit of background on how these things work, especially with Netflix. Netflix is notorious for having all these boxes they want to check. You know, can you change this scene that you have in this part of the world to this other person part of the world? Can you make, this sort of group, apparently Russians are a big one. Can you make them evil? Netflix loves to change things. I was just talking with someone about this who walked away from a Netflix deal because they're like, no, this is too much. And I said to them, yeah, Netflix thinks, development is like pizza toppings, and it is possible to have too many toppings on a pizza. That's what it feels like to deal with certain streaming services that have this box of, okay, because it's big data, right? They like this does well for this. So can you do this, and this, even if it doesn't fit the property at all? And I don't even understand why they'd start developing the property when it contains none of those things. But I have heard from numerous people who have dealt with Netflix. Netflix loves to change stuff. And it's very possible that she fully intended to not race bend. And then Netflix happened. Now, this is when I have been in a situation where somebody asked me to change a straight female character to a gay man, and I said no, and that was the end of the development on that series. So, while we all hope that in that moment we will stick to our guns and keep our creative vision, when you're this close to getting a TV show developed, that can be really hard. And so maybe, I think it is more likely, if it makes you feel any better, commenter, that she fully intended not to race bend, and then things happened. I don't think she went in intending to deceive. Now, was it still deceptive? Yeah. I mean, in the same way that, I don't think CD Projekt Red intended for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of Cyberpunk to be totally fucking broken at launch, but they knew they were in rough shape a month before launch, which is why they showed nothing of those versions of the games. So they knew it was a possibility. Or they promised things they couldn't guarantee. And that's an amateur move. Like, that's a rookie move, promising things that you can't guarantee. You get caught up in it, and sometimes you want it so badly that you think by promising it, it means it'll somehow magically happen. It's like, oh, we promised it. We have to make this happen now, right? There are just some boulders you can't move. They're too heavy. And so you shouldn't, God, I have been freaked out because I set a release date for Boss Fight Episode 3 with much less of the show done than I normally do. And I have been stressing about it ever since because I am not giving myself enough gear up time. It'll be fine. Worst case scenario, you'll find out, check Twitter later today, that it'll be delayed a day. That's the only possible thing that could happen, but I still really don't want to do it. I like to be able to go, and I screwed up about that recently. I said I was going to get going to get the t-shirt shipped out for Christmas, at least in some cases. And then post office Mageddon, man. And I admit, again, I talked about this. I was too scared to go in because there were too many people. But also it just, could you imagine being that person where people are waiting to ship the one gift and you're like, oh, I got like a big bulk mail thing going on. I shouldn't have said anything publicly. I was excited about it. I was hoping, but I shouldn't have said it, right? And that's a minuscule thing, right? That's not something to do with the product itself. That's just a timeline thing. So I think it's almost like a core value, right? Some people I've met think promises are things they do if they can. Not promises are things you keep. Break them, very rarely. And if you do break them, you better be profusely sorry and mean it, because breaking promises damages relationships. And it happens sometimes. Despite everything, sometimes you can't come through, right? You promise to be somewhere for somebody and it's a blizzard that day and you get snowed in or something like that, right? There are good reasons to not keep a promise and there are not great reasons to keep a promise. And even if you don't see it as an ethical thing, consequentially, people aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt and defend you the next time if you have a track record of not keeping your word, this time. That's real simple. Right? So people like that, people who betray trust, better not expect to have that trust going forward. And I really think we'll see that if there's another Last of Us game. I am not convinced there will be. Because if Neil Druckmann gets distracted by the bright, shiny object of an HBO series and spends all his time on that, either there'll be a new creative director on The Last of Us 3 and we'll have a hope in hell of it being coherent, or it just won't happen because he's gone into Hollywood where you make a lot more money for a lot less work, and you have a lot more power in terms of creative stuff. If you work at a game dev company, your boss tells you to change something, you're like, no, you can't say my artistic vision, I will not, right? In TV, people have more power to do that. So we'll see. I wouldn't terribly mind if The Last of Us passed off into an HBO series now, because maybe, hopefully, then we'll get an IP from Naughty Dog that isn't, nihilistic, railroaded, forced, emotional. I'll stop now. I'm getting triggered. I'm getting sucked into this. Okay. Hopefully Boss Fight will do it tomorrow. Again, check. If Boss Fight is not tomorrow, I will do the last bit of feedback. If I don't do, if Boss Fight is tomorrow, the last feedback question will be Friday. Because after Boss Fight comes up and I pre-record Friday, I am taking some time off. I desperately need it. I am super burned out. So, I don't know what the content's going to be like next week. I will see. But I am so burned out right now. I am doing the saying the wrong word malapropism thing. And that is a clear sign for me that I need to get some rest. Not just sleep. I need to rest my brain. It's been going to gangbusters for too long on too many cylinders. So, I don't know. I might just take a break between Christmas and New Year's and come back in the new year. Again, through Twitter, I will say what I'm doing. I will keep you guys up to date. I will communicate. But, fried. Okay, time for me to stop. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patrons are going to get something very, very special this week. That's all I'll say. Thanks for watching.